In the wake of the Charleston shooting, the Confederate flag and other Confederate memorials have become rather controversial. While they've been controversial for the past couple decades, this controversy has really escalated since the tragic loss of life in Charleston. While I personally believe that the Confederate flag and other Confederate memorials should be left alone, I can understand the opposition. Today I'm going to tell you why I think they should be left alone, and hopefully we can come to an agreement. The first thing I would like to point out is that they involve history and heritage. The southern United States was always culturally different than the northeastern and rest of America. It's the oldest colonies in the world, not world, in America, and had a drastically different culture due to its different climate. The North was primarily industrial, while the South was primarily agrarian, i.e. that's the reason they had plantations, while the North tend to have factories. Another thing to keep in mind about the history is that the Confederate Army also included African Americans, Native Americans, and Jewish Americans, as well as Irish, Germans, and Italians. Also, I would like to point out that the Confederate veterans are, by an act of Congress, United States veterans. They received military benefits after the war and were treated with the same respect. Congress also allowed the Department of War, which is the predecessor of the modern Department of Defense, to build Confederate graveyards and erect tombstones honoring Confederate veterans. That's not the most important issue that we've really seen in the controversy. The biggest thing we see is that a lot of people think that the Confederate flag and the Confederacy in general were racist. This is simply not true. They may have had slavery, but so did the rest of the United States up until a few decades before that. And also, every other civilization on Earth has had slaves at one point or another. The British, the Romans. In fact, slavery is still going on in Africa today. Unfortunate. And can even be said that slavery is going on in America, though that is a completely different topic right now. People will point out to the fact that the KKK and other racist groups use the Confederate flag as their symbols. The KKK isn't the only group that uses the Confederate flag as their symbol. Not to mention the KKK also uses the Christian cross and the United States flag. Are the cross and the United States flag racist? In my opinion, no. The cross is a symbol of Jesus Christ and Christianity, and we know that there are Christians of all different colors, backgrounds, and nationalities. Same with the US. The US is the only country in the world to have someone of each nationality and ethnic background. Is our flag racist? No. Another thing to point out is most Southerners did not own slaves. In fact, it was a very small minority. The average Southern soldier was a poor white farmer. And there was also, as I said earlier, black, Jewish, Italian, and Native American soldiers. They did serve in less amounts because there were less. And in regards to the slavery held by the Confederate States of America, whether the war was about slavery or not, it was something that was going to be ended regardless of who won the war. Jefferson Davis, the president of the Confederacy, was willing to forfeit slavery if the British or French were willing to help the South win the war. And after Russia had freed their serfs, which was just another word for slavery, but instead of owned by a person, owned by whoever owns the land that the serf is bound to, a lot of people in the Confederacy realized how barbaric slavery was. The thing is, they didn't want to free everyone at once. They didn't see it as an economically viable or really a moral thing to do. Most slaves had no skills besides the ones they used on the plantation. And many people in the South wanted to free slaves, but only after they were educated on other skills that would help them survive, outside of slavery, that is. And in regards to the South seceding over the issue of slavery, there really isn't a lot of evidence to support that. The primary example that we see when looking at history for the South seceding is because of Abraham Lincoln's election. If you look at a map of the election of 1860, you'll see Abraham Lincoln didn't win a single southern state. In fact, he wasn't on a ballot in almost every one. He didn't need to win the South to become the president. An unfortunate side effect of how democracy worked in early America. And that is why I think that we should just leave the Confederate flag and other Confederate monuments alone. It's a part of our history. They're not actually racist things, and that those are honoring veterans of the United States by law. Now, before I leave, I'd like to ask you something. If America had lost the American Revolution and the British were telling people in America that we couldn't fly the American flag to honor our heritage, would you be happy with it? I don't think so.